The presentation I was going to make was somewhat spoiled by Mr. Voskanyan. In his excellent speech, he covered a lot of what I was going to cover. There's a lot of keywords: legitimacy, social contract. I was going to cover a lot of what he already covered, but I want to thank him because in 10-15 minutes I wouldn't have been able to cover everything, so I will just add some thoughts and present my opinions, and at the end, as Mr. Voskanyan said, a very melancholic conclusion. And it will be close to Mr. Danielyan's speech just a little earlier about where we're going. And logic shows, and prompts, and world experience prompts we're not going anywhere good. And going somewhere bad isn't because of persons. It's not because Nikol Pashinyan and others being bad people, it's just the logic. And many of us were in his place, in this situation, we would have gone down a very bad path. And let me now try to somehow justify this. And to justify this, I'll give you a brief overview of our history from 1988 onwards and explain some of the world's experience, which is very similar to our current developments. I think that after 1988, Armenia had a social contract on one point. And it was that Karabakh is ours, Karabakh belongs to us. After 1988, people were ready to be hungry, to be in a blockade, to die in the war for just one demand. And that demand is that Karabakh belongs to us, Karabakh is ours. After 1988, the government promised nothing but Karabakh. Kept the promise. In all other matters, it was free because it hadn't promised anything else. So we had a legitimate government. And let me tell you that the Supreme Council elected in 1998 was legitimate but somewhat unlawful. I was a witness, and I can tell you there were violations, terrible number of violations on both sides in the election. I was an observer back then from the Mergelian Institute at the New Russian district. The police put the two of us in a car and took us to the mountains, let us out of the car. By the time we came back from the mountains, the election was over, and they smiled and they said, "Here, now you can come and check, you can count the ballots." Under the Supreme Council leadership, there was cheating. They lied to the communists about giving them the position of the prime minister, but it was a legitimate government. And the public supported that government. Not lawful, but legitimate. At a later stage, Levon Petrosyan tried to breach the social contract in his famous speech in 1997. And we had agreement on Karabakh. He breached it, and he said that in Karabakh we need to make some sort of a mutual concession. Surrender territories, and then you know what happened thereafter. And there was a coup d'etat, social contract, concluded in 1988. The only contract in our recent history was breached. Came the war boys, led by Vazgen Sargsyan, who said, we'll take ownership. We revived the social contract. We are responsible for Karabakh. And then after the infamous events of October 27, the only ideology was that there are people who will sell Karabakh, but a person of Karabakh will not sell Karabakh. And that was Kocharyan's revived social contract comprising only one paragraph, followed by some very interesting events. The kleptocracy emerged. The kleptocracy had no legitimacy foundation whatsoever. That kleptocracy tried to somehow justify its existence. We're robbing, we're stealing, but you can read this in the programs of the Republican Party of Armenia. As long as Karabakh is not solved, we will stay in power. And Sargsyan said at the end, that I will turn in the grave, the only social contract point that he wanted to revive. The other item was that the nation army concept related to the first item. A third item was the church. Now back to conservatism, gained legitimacy, the milliyet idea. But for centuries we were a milliyet, a nation religion that did not function either. And the fourth item was some Najdeh idea. Remained unclear, and that wasn't really, one couldn't really be sure about its compatibility with the ecclesiastical idea. And the illegitimate power was replaced by a process. We cannot call it a revolution. It wasn't a revolution. But the idea was Sergic, go away, and Sergism, go away. What is Sergism was not formulated, but Sergism, go away. Plus love and solidarity. But right now what's happening is hate and punishment. That's the current slogan of the government. And the main heroes are the chief of the National Security Service and the police chief. They're the main proponents of this slogan. Remember, April 1917, Lenin came to implement the revolution. Published his famous April theses. Until the end of the Soviet Union, students and school children studied the concept of what we were building. It didn't matter whether that was really being constructed, but it was the concept of the new state. In April, the Armenian Revolution did not have its April thesis, its concept of a future. We never heard anything about the concept for the future. Revenge, punishment, vendetta and punishment was the term demanded by people. People wanted blood for all the crimes that were symbolized by General Marvel, beasts, an animal, and we're sure every day. And people demand revenge. Now look here, if you don't have a concept for the future, or a thesis, or anything for the future, what are you left with? You're left with catering to the popular hunger for hate. A few classical examples to show you of all the most repressive regimes that we knew happened because of popular demand. Yeah, look at Ivan Grozny, one of Stalin's favorite historic protagonists, and how did that system emerge? He said, in the country, one of the historians wrote back then, in the country is there sin ubiquitous? Is there schism and fighting, hate, and people rise to their feet for the Tsar to come and to punish? The Tsar demonstratively relinquished the throne, went to a nearby village. People in Moscow came out, demanded the Tsar to come and punish everyone. Comes the Tsar, establishes the Krishtiana, the famous institution, which was a religious union, an interesting religious mechanism. Ivan Grozny had the status of a priest, similar to the system of Yanicharis, and with people cherishing, they would hang as many as 200 people per day, ever-growing popular demand. The people loved the Tsar, and it went on until people's time came. Look at the French Revolution. Two ideas in the French Revolution, where about 1 million people were guillotined. The first one was the anti-revolution, second the English spies. Because before the revolution, in the time of the king, French treasury was emptied. Most of the money went to the defense of the American Revolution, to harm England, basically, which was France's rival. England, in turn, financed the French Revolution. One of the then Prime Ministers, Pitt, would then later write that the French Revolution cost them 25 million pounds sterling. Because of that funding, the deteriorating France-Britain relationship, the main accusation was aimed against the English spies. Let's burn them alive. Did not matter if they were spies. Burn them or guillotine them. And those were the accusations. Killing over 1 million people. It was with popular demand, popular support, and people demanded blood and were cherishing blood. Same in the days of the Russian Revolution. Red Terror followed White Terror. First came White Terror. Well, the response was the Red Terror. One of the accusations was the counter-revolution. The other accusation was the foreign spies. Today's archives show that Serlov was linked to the British Foreign Services, Trotsky to the American ones. His brother was a banker, Lenin, as you all know, was German. And there was one person that belonged to no one, and that was Stalin, the state builder. So there was the cleaning up. There were real reasons. There were spies, there were enemies of people, and there were people who used the system for their personal issues. So if you operate the repressive machine, it will not stop. The repressive machine will stop if you have a model for the future of the kind of state you want to build. And if you know what kind of state you want to build, love and tolerance prevail. You punish this one, and that other one compensates for the stealing, for humiliating people, but they're business people. So they were in that mechanism unwillingly. We forgive that third group because dozens of thousands of people were involved in that disgrace which happened in Armenia, mass disgrace. You can't punish everyone, you have to forgive. But forgive what? Forgive for what? Forgive for the future. Forgive for this country we're trying to build. If you don't know what kind of country you want to build, and if after the revolution there's been no political statement, there was none. No concept of the future, of the value system, then what are you left with? You have elections coming up. The more people you catch, the more results you'll have. And you'll really have results. That's the logic. That's the logic that awaits us. A country with a small population, limited resources, dependent on the outside. Is it possible? I don't know, but that's the logic. So I don't think we should always rely on some people, on some politicians. Almost all of us took part in the revolution, but the revolution was privatized. And there's now a term, the revolutionary team. That team owns the revolution. The 100,000 people played no role. And the public and those people who are ready or able to do it should formulate the future concept and its political substance and change the country. This is not an accusation at today's government or Nikol Pashinyan, who personifies the revolution, because any one of us in his place would want to stay in the political process and in government, and you had no other choice. Unless you have a political text, you need repressions. With repression, you will gain vote, and then the machine cannot be stopped. It will come and eat you alive, but you have no other choice. And this is, or was, my pessimistic and short speech. I may be wrong, but I tried to rely on the historical experience. Now, we don't sit and we don't wait to see what happens, because look, in the revolution there were the active people. These active people are now sitting in front of the internet and applauding, oh look who got caught. And if one person says General Marvel or Schmeiss should not be caught, can you imagine? Be thought of as stupid. Any conscious person cannot say that. I mean, how can you forgive these people? You need to punish them. But you need to draw the line of the punishment, how far you go punishing them, and where do you forgive them, and for what do you forgive them, for the sake of what do you forgive them? So that's our brief, I'm sorry for this assignment, homework for today and for tomorrow and for our future work. Thank you.